Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last episode here for season three, where I'm going to talk about the conversation Janice and I had about our listening partnership. I am hoping that how I'm recording today, which is outside on my front porch because it is a beautiful day. It's been a beautiful weekend, and I really don't want to go sit inside and stare at a computer screen. So I'm hopeful that this will work out well and I won't have to do it again in a couple hours. So as I listened to our podcast again, when Janice and I were talking about listening partners, it just struck me how different it is, and kind of how I think, I don't know, for her, maybe for me, sometimes it's challenging at the same time that it's very wonderful. Actually, this week, we changed our time for probably the first time in the last 2 years that we have done this. It used to be later afternoon for me, 3, 4 o'clock, and it's usually midday for her. And since it's summer, we made a shift. So it's actually 9 or 10 in the morning for her. I think it's 9 in the morning for her, and it's noon for me. It's lunchtime. So one, we couldn't talk for longer. And two, it was different in a different, we've gotten so used to kind of, I think, the way our days were, that having it, I will admit, I kind of felt a little untethered the rest of the day. But maybe that was good. Our conversation lingered longer. Usually it finished my work day, or I only worked for, maybe 2 hours afterward. But now, since it was for noon my time, I at least had 3 or 4 or 5 hours to go. So it definitely landed differently, which I think will be an interesting thing as we integrate this summer. And it also means we just can't talk for too long, which is good. The first thing she talked about, and it's funny, we had the conversation about this podcast about like, what are we gonna share? What are we willing to share? What are we not willing to share? And it really, I've been talking a lot about it lately. And so is Janice, about starting in with our cycle day. We are women. We identify as women. Our bodies work as women's bodies. And through this practice, I've gotten more aware of my capacities at certain times of the month and certain times of the year, and just what my body is willing to do and what my body is willing not to do. So having that cycle check-in, I feel like that's a great way to ground myself back into my body. It's another way of grounding into your body. Sometimes I meditate, sometimes I do yoga. I know of people doing a bunch of things, taking walks outside. But for us, it's a great kind of grounding exercise to get back into our body and ourselves, what our body can do and what our body cannot do, and also what we can do, or what I can do and what I cannot do. And then we went on to talk about kind of the interesting parts, the unknown parts of a listening practice of, 10 minutes, one person just talks and the other person listens for 10 minutes. But besides that, there's not a lot of instruction. We did focus on that the listener is not judging, and that we have mentioned, we'll say, okay, we're going to put a pin on that and come back later. Usually because now that we have been 2 years in our relationship, we can kind of see where the other one might be getting lost in stuff and not see her own brilliance. Or, hey, I just want to mention, this is what I've heard from you the last couple times. So we do that, but we try hard not to do that. And we'll only do it if we really, really need to do that. But we're getting better at kind of knowing that we are going to remember and we're going to go back to it. So 10 minutes to talk. So, you can't go on a rant. You can't kind of let yourself spiral down. It really is 10 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about, and giving yourself that container, I find, really brings stuff out of the body and then brings what you need into the body. And it's so to know that someone's going to listen to you for 10 minutes, no judgment, no comment after. I mean, we talk about it after because we're connected, but for listening partners, you truly it could be a 30-minute thing, 10-minute, it can be a 23-minute thing. Someone listens for 10 minutes. Someone talks for 10 minutes. Someone listens for 10 minutes. Thank you for sharing. And then we talk about our grounding question. What'd you eat today? What's around you that you could touch? The other person goes, they talk, the other person listens. They thank them for sharing, ask them a grounding question. Okay, thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye. It could be that short. And I think that's how she and I started. though we kind of, as we were talking and sharing, we just wanted to know more about the person on the end of the line. But I think the beauty of a listening partnership is it doesn't have to be what Janice and I have made it. It could be as simple as you have 10 minutes, somebody listening to you with no judgment. I mean, I can imagine there's probably not a person who has not been to some form of therapy or had somebody listen to them, and what a difference that was. And imagine if we all just listened to each other instead of not listening and judging and deciding. And then, we've got to go to therapy to pay somebody a lot of money to listen to us. So just think, this tool could save you hundreds of dollars. I was going to say hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. That's how much these things get into our brain. Hundreds of dollars on therapy, which is probably just as important or more than car insurance. And we talked about that. We know that we're going to check in, even if the weeks are crazy, even if the day coming up to it, just knowing you have that time. Again, I'm likening it to therapy, not because it's therapy, but like knowing you've got a moment to check in with yourself, to check in with somebody who is listening and cares about you and also is not judgmental toward you. We talked about that a lot, like not judging. Like we probably know each other's secrets, but we don't judge. There's stuff that I've been dealing with the entire time that I've been talking with Janice, and I'm like, here we go again. I'm going to complain about this again, and no judgment. She just listens. That's just the way it is. We just don't have that judgment part come up because we came into this relationship of no judgment. You're just listening and you're just holding space and you're moving on. And it's funny, there have been times, as Janice mentioned, the same with me, we get on the phone, no idea why we're meeting or why we're talking, or, sometimes the checking in, sometimes you don't want to drop in and check in. Sometimes you don't want to be, you just want to keep going. You just want to keep doing. But we trust that we're going to show up for it, just like we show up for any other thing we don't want to do. And then it always brings out what we needed to hear, either for both of us or for one of us, or it's always a comfort of some form, at least for me. And we mentioned, and as I said when I introduced her, I don't even know if I said her last name correctly. I did my best, which, considering my last name, I should be a little more cautious of it. But really, we check in from time to time and we'll share things. But really, we keep it very much in our listening partnership. We keep it in that 1 hour sacred space. We didn't intentionally do that. I think, well, when you meet someone new and this is your partnership and like this is what you've agreed to do, you're not necessarily wanting to reach out extra. But as it's gone on, we've reached out extra. Particularly, and I'll say this, I've reached out because, again, she knows all my secrets. So if I text her on the weekend, I'm like, I'm struggling with this. It's not because I'm asking her to answer. It's just like, hey, I just need to be seen and held. And then she will send back like love or such. And as we continue on, we are having more random texts and such. And it has been such a blessing, in my life. So it's funny because I have two friends like this. Well, she is one, and I have another friend who I met previous to interneting and all of the things and text messaging and such. And even though we now have all these technologies, she and I still write letters. That is exclusively our mode of communication. We do not email, we do not text, we do not call. We had to when we met up in February because we hadn't seen each other in, oh my gosh, 10 years, 13 years. And she was getting ready to be stationed elsewhere. And she was like, hey, I don't know where we're going to be. Let's make this happen. So we texted for that time. We saw each other in person, texted when we got home, and then it's been letter writing ever since. And there's something, again, it's that space holding. There's something very special about it. Not that I don't want to know what's going on with her, but our relationship was built prior to text messaging, so it doesn't feel like we need it. And I think similarly, we all want to get off our phones. We all want to get off all the technology and being such. There have been times I think we've texted each other, depending upon the situation. But really, I think that's what's so special about a listening partnership is the relationship intention and being held. Similarly, I think with relationships that have or were built prior to technology, we knew how to hold space a little bit easier. We kind of knew what was required for a relationship. And I think sometimes, and this is good because I sometimes want to socialize and sometimes I don't. Sometimes the texting and the emailing and the connecting and the being on the Facebook and all the things, like we lose the space because we think we know what's going on instead of holding the space for that relationship to bloom. And it's funny. Janice goes, "Am I allowed to say this?" And it's popped up in my head. The two or three gathered in your name. If you are Christian or not, probably familiar with this thought, even from other faith traditions. The divine will enter, and I think that's the magic in the space of the relationship. If you are gathered for the same intention, the divine is going to figure it out for you. You don't have to. And I think with some of this transactional, not meaning to be transactional, but with the texting and the you kind of don't have the same intention gathering. You kind of get to be disconnected, and sometimes you got to be disconnected. Let's not kid ourselves. Sometimes that's the way things have to be. But she said it like that. The divine is the best efficiency of, like, even if we only have an hour to meet, we're going to be uplifted and we're going to get what we need out of this. And she said that she's usually structure averse, but I think this is probably the least structured thing I do on a daily basis or a weekly basis. I mean, very simple guidelines. I mean, it could be 5 minutes and 5 minutes, and you could be done with this conversation in less than 15 minutes if you really wanted to. So I just think it was a great example, and it is a great example to me weekly of how we should be listening. Not just to ourselves or our friends and family or the world. I mean, to all of it is what I'm saying. Like to how we should be listening to everything. And some days we get that opportunity and some days we don't, and that's fine. But it just helps. It's helped me to remember how to listen and how the seemingly, oh gosh, it's another phone call. Oh gosh, I'm not ready. Oh gosh, I don't know what cycle day I'm on. Oh gosh, I'm just going to rant and rave like a lunatic and she's going to think I'm crazy. Which luckily she doesn't, and I'm very grateful. But she's gonna think I'm crazy. But that also becomes an exercise in listening. And even if you don't know what you're doing, even if you're feeling discombobulated and not put together, it's gonna come. And even if you just randomly answer someone's message and decide to talk about for a while, I think there's a lot of fear, and understandably, of like talking to someone you don't know. But there's also a lot of freedom in that they don't have that judgment. They don't know anything of your life. And if both are looking for that same type of listening, the odds are good you're being paired with somebody who similarly won't judge or won't sit there and lecture you on such things. So it is such a blessing in my life, and it continues to be such a blessing in my life that I get to talk to her weekly. And it is we do deal with when we do have to skip. But she's always there, even when we're not texting and chatting. She's always there. She's been a huge part of my development in the last 2 years, and kind of getting me to not just listen as I talk about, but to do the things that the voice is telling me to do, especially when I really don't want to do them. And conversations with her have helped that clarity, have helped to kind of prune back some of the things and decide what is really important to me and how do I go forward and do that, whatever that looks like for me. So thank you all for joining me this season. I really appreciate it. I've had so much fun talking to these 3 women, learned some amazing things, and also just I became fortified and supported in what I'm thinking of doing, and just on being a human on this planet. Sometimes we just need that support. And these ladies, in all of their talents, do the listening, and they do a reflection that supports people in love. And I'm so grateful that I got to do this. As I mentioned in the last episode, this is why people pay people to support the podcast and to do the background and to do the editing. I do it all myself because I'm just doing it for fun. So I need to take a break. It's been a little intense the last couple weeks, and I'm getting ready to do some in-person events and some other things. So it is time for me to take a pause for now, but I will be back probably in the fall, and we'll see where we go with it. So thank you all for listening, and please keep listening, and I'll see you soon.